The air inside Morgan's bakery tasted like everything she'd worked for. Warm yeast rising from the ovens, a soft ribbon of lavender woven through the space from the bundles she'd hung above the counter, and the low murmur of jazz curling out from the speakers like it had been waiting its whole life to play here. Light slid across the reclaimed oak table she had sanded and sealed herself, each one reflecting the glow of pendant lamps she'd spent weeks hunting for at flea markets and salvage shops. It was, in every way that mattered, perfect. She moved through the shop with the crisp efficiency of someone trying to keep her emotions from spilling over. Excess moisture ruins a crust, she whispered to herself, a rule for bread that she'd long ago adopted for the rest of her life. Hold steady. Don't let anything leak out. The center of the room, positioned so it caught the best light and the softest breeze each time the door opened, sat the VIP table. She'd spent more time on that single foretop than any other piece in the shop, polishing the reclaimed oak until it gleamed, arranging the linen napkins, placing the small vase of lavender sprigs just off-center for a touch of imperfection. A tiny wooden sign stood proudly at the edge of the table. Reserved. Family only. Her father had said he was proud of her. Her sister had promised she wouldn't miss it for the world. They'd all said this was a big day. The bakery filled quickly. Lines formed. The smell of fresh brioche drifted through the door each time a customer stepped inside, followed by a small burst of the late morning breeze. Morgan wiped her hands on her apron and glanced again at the VIP table, waiting for familiar faces to appear. 10:17 a.m. They still hadn't. Her phone buzzed against the counter. She almost ignored it, until she saw the glowing banner across the screen. Her sister's name. Instagram notification. Morgan opened it. There they were. Her father, her sister, her cousins, all crammed into a sticky booth at some sports bar she'd never heard of. A pitcher of cheap beer sweating in the middle of the table. Neon lights reflecting blue and green off their faces. Her father grinning beneath a TV flashing some preseason game. The caption hit harder than any of it. Family tradition. Drinks before noon. American football clinking beer mugs. Not a single mention of her. Not a single hint they'd even remembered. Her fingers tightened around the phone until her nails dug into her palm. The jazz kept playing. Customers kept smiling. Bread kept rising, and inside, Morgan made sure the moisture did not escape. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. She set the phone down, walked to the VIP table, lifted the reserved, family-only sign, the wood warm beneath her hands, and snapped it clean in half. The crack echoed faintly under the jazz. A couple waiting nearby startled. Morgan smiled at them, steady and controlled. Table's yours if you'd like it. Then she pulled out her phone one last time and typed the only message she was willing to send. Table is open to paying customers. Don't bother coming. The silence that followed the grand opening betrayal did not surprise Morgan. She'd lived in the quiet spaces between disappointments for most of her life. If anything, the absence of her family felt like a familiar echo, one she'd grown up hearing, one she'd been conditioned to swallow. People liked to call her dedicated. Her parents preferred steady. Both were just polite ways of saying you're the one we count on to clean up the messes. For 15 years, Morgan had lived a life defined by 4 a.m. wake-up calls. While the world slept, she was already elbow-deep in dough, enduring burns that scarred her wrists, breathing in enough flour that it felt like a second set of lungs had formed inside her chest. There was no room for sick days. No space for slowing down. Bread did not wait, and neither did the bills. The family liked to forget that part. Meanwhile, Alexander, their golden boy, was always on the verge of something brilliant. He's just ideating, their mother would say with a soft smile, as if the word itself were sacred. He filled notebooks with half-formed business plans and doodled prototypes on takeout napkins, each one presented like a future empire. Morgan had listened to every pitch, nodding, encouraging, even when she knew he'd forget the idea by the next morning. She had been raised to be the net beneath his tightrope. A sturdy, dependable thing meant to catch him when he inevitably fell. Again and again and again. It wasn't just emotional labor. It was financial too. There was the year he wanted to start a lifestyle brand, and she quietly paid for the website hosting because he'd accidentally overdraft again. The months she covered groceries when he insisted he needed to focus fully on building momentum. The nights she packed leftovers from the bakery to take to him. Food he rarely thanked her for. She even loaned him money for a business retreat that turned out to be a weekend trip with friends, and through it all, their parents would beam at Alexander's potential, a halo of imagined future greatness glowing around him. "Morgan is so steady," they'd say with fond admiration, the verbal equivalent of patting a workhorse on the head. "Alexander just has such a spark." Reliable versus genius. Steady versus brilliant. Responsible versus destined. She had been typecast without consent. Still, Morgan kept grinding. On a baker's wage, modest, predictable, unglamorous. She had managed to save $50,000. Every dollar was earned the hard way. Blistered hands, missed sleep, shifts traded so her co-workers could spend holidays with their families. She missed vacations, weddings, 4th of July barbecues. Once even a funeral. Life events came and went, but she was always at the oven, always filling in, always being the reliable one. And somehow, despite everything she provided, the family remained more invested in Alexander's next hypothetical success than in her actual accomplishments, which made the grand opening cut even deeper. But it also made the clarity sharper. By midnight, the bakery had emptied out. The last customer had thanked her. The last tray had cooled. She turned off the jazz, flipped the lights, and locked the door. The reclaimed oak tables, once a symbol of what she hoped to share, now glowed like proof of what she'd built on her own. Her phone buzzed on the counterpoint. 19 missed calls. 3 from her father. 8 from her sister. The rest from relatives who were now so confused and so sorry, and on their way after the social media fallout. For once, Morgan didn't reach for the phone. Didn't open the messages. Didn't rehearse the apology they expected from her. A deep, quiet peace flooded her. Not the heavy silence of resignation she'd known for years, but something lighter. Something liberating. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for them to validate me. The bakery hummed with that truth. And she let it settle into her bones. Morgan arrived at the bakery just before sunrise. The sky still the muted violet of early morning. She expected the peace she always found in those quiet moments. Coffee brewing, ovens warming, the soft hum of the building waking with her. Instead, she heard heavy, authoritative footsteps pacing across the front room. Robert, he wore what he always wore when he wanted to look reasonable. A tucked-in business casual polo, crisp jeans, and that air of managerial disappointment he'd perfected over decades. His arms were crossed. His jaw was set. He wasn't angry. He was preparing to be angry. There was a difference. "Morgan," he said, voice clipped. "We need to talk." She didn't stop moving. Didn't offer him coffee. Didn't give him the soft landing he expected. "You're here early," she said, flipping open the register. He sighed like she'd already inconvenienced him. "We would have been here yesterday if we hadn't been networking." Morgan kept her expression neutral. "At a sports bar." He nodded, oblivious to the acidity in her tone. "Angel investors hang out there, actually. You wouldn't know that. It's a different crowd." He followed her behind the counter without being invited, surveying the bakery as if assessing an employee's workspace. "Your sister posted that you got upset. I get it, you're emotional. But what matters now is moving forward." He cleared his throat, then delivered the real reason for his visit. Alexander's project is gaining momentum. He's working on an app, one that supports gig economy workers. Very innovative stuff. There it was. The pitch. Robert stepped closer. "He needs capital. Not a lot. 50,000. The number hung in the air like a sour smell. Morgan paused mid-movement. $50,000. He waved a dismissive hand. "Small potatoes at this stage. Think big, Morgan. Your little bakery is doing well. Great even. But it's time you start contributing to the family's bigger picture. Alexander's ideas could help all of us." She felt something old and familiar tug at her. Reflexive guilt, conditioned duty, but she anchored her feet. "I'm not giving you my savings." Robert stared at her like she hadn't understood the instructions. "This is your turn to support. We've always lifted each other. You know that. Ube. You're good at what you do. He gestured vaguely at the ovens. But Alexander, he's trying to build something real. You playing with flour isn't the same. Morgan inhaled slowly, deliberately. Then she pulled her leather ledger from beneath the counter. A quiet, measured movement. She opened it to a flagged page and tilted it toward him. 2015, she read. You said you'd help me get a loan for culinary school. Rejected. Flip of a page. 2018. Requested assistance replacing my car when the engine died. Rejected. Another flip. 2020. Asked for help covering rent when the bakery construction was delayed. Rejected. She closed the book. Precise. You've never invested in me. Robert's face reddened. Don't start rewriting history. You owe this family. And if you don't want to help your brother, then. He stepped toward her, puffing up, using height as intimidation, but something unshakable rose inside her. Stop, she said. Clear. Firm. Access to my life is not a birthright. It's a privilege. Robert froze. Leave, she said. You don't get to talk to me like this in my bakery. He sputtered, searching for authority he no longer possessed, but her silence was stronger finally. He turned, footsteps loud against the floorboards as he stormed out, muttering about disrespect and ungrateful children. When the door shut behind him, the bakery felt brighter. Warmer. Hers again. 2 days after Robert stormed out of the bakery, just as Morgan was finding a rhythm again, the universe, or rather her family, sent its next message. He arrived at 9:12 a.m., right in the middle of the breakfast rush, beige windbreaker. Clipboard. Official badge glinting beneath the fluorescent lights. Good morning, he said, projecting his voice with the practiced authority of someone who'd been ignored before and learned to compensate. I'm with the county health department. We've received a report of a rodent infestation at this location. He didn't just say rodent infestation. He said rats, loudly. Customers froze mid-bite. A mother pulled her toddler closer. A couple who'd been splitting a croissant stood so quickly their chairs screeched across the reclaimed oak floor. The bakery went from lively to more cold in seconds. Morgan swallowed hard. May I ask who filed the complaint? The inspector flipped a page on his clipboard. A concerned relative who claimed to have seen the infestation personally. Of course, he began his inspection, opening cabinets, scanning baseboards, checking traps that didn't exist because she'd never needed them. Every time he shined his flashlight, Morgan felt the humiliation burn hotter. People whispered. Some backed out slowly, leaving their half-finished pastries on the table. Others walked straight out the front door without meeting her eyes. This was exactly what the caller wanted. For 45 excruciating minutes, the inspector combed through every inch of her bakery while the scent of fresh baguettes and lavender hung useless in the air. Morgan stood with her arms crossed, jaw locked, fighting the urge to crumble finally. He closed his clipboard and gave a small, incredulous shake of his head. Miss Hart, this is one of the cleanest kitchens I've seen in months, he said. There's nothing here. Not a dropping, not a hole, not a single sign of rodents. I'll file this as a false complaint. Relief didn't come. Just anger. Once he left, Morgan locked the door and went straight to the security monitor. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from certainty. She rewound the footage from earlier that morning. There it was. Alexander's car, idling across the street. For 20 minutes. He never stepped inside. He never got out. He just watched. Her breath caught, not in surprise but in confirmation. This wasn't family conflict. This was sabotage. This was war. You don't mess with a chef's kitchen, she whispered. And then she did the thing they never expected her to do. The thing that separated children from adults, victims from survivors. She picked up the phone, dialed the non-emergency line and said, I need to file a police report for a false health complaint made with malicious intent. Her voice didn't shake. She wasn't Morgan the scapegoat anymore. She was the prosecutor. It was close to midnight when the knock came. Soft, hurried and wrong. Not the kind of knock you get from friends or customers. The kind that belongs to someone who's afraid of being heard. Morgan wiped flour from her hands and opened the door a careful inch. Kayla stood there looking like a ghost pretending to be human. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes swollen, and her hands shook so violently she had to grip the doorframe to steady herself. "Please," she whispered. "Can I come in?" Morgan stepped aside. Kayla slipped inside like someone escaping a burning building. "What happened?" Morgan asked quietly. Kayla didn't sit. Didn't breathe properly. She clutched her phone like it was the last stable thing in her life. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't know who else would believe me." Morgan felt the weight of that. Who else would believe me? And her chest tightened. Kayla swallowed hard. "There is no app." The words fell between them like broken glass. "No investors, no project, nothing." She pressed her shaking hands to her face. "Alexander owes $80,000. Not to banks. To bookies." Morgan didn't blink. Of course the number was bigger than the lie. The lies were always shiny. The truth was always rotten. Kayla kept talking, the words tumbling out. "He told your dad he needed funding to get the app finished. But it's all gambling debt. He's been lying to everyone. And Robert." She stopped. Her throat closed. She tried again. "Robert knows. He's known for weeks." Morgan felt her pulse slow. Cold. Steady. Kayla unlocked her phone with trembling fingers. "I recorded them," she said. "I'm sorry. I know it's wrong, but they were talking about you, Morgan." She opened a voice memo, and the bakery filled with the sound of Robert's calm, managerial voice. "Robert, we don't need to confront her. There's a clause in the power of attorney from years ago. She never revoked it. We can liquidate the bakery assets. Ovens, mixers, everything. The equipment's worth at least $100 grand. Alexander. But what if she finds out? What if she..." "Robert, she won't. She never questions us. She's always been grateful for crumbs." Morgan's jaw clenched. The recording continued. "Robert, we strip it for parts, sublease the space, pay off your debt, and then you can restart fresh. Your sister will land on her feet. Alexander. What if people ask why she closed?" Robert, low, chuckling. "She's just a baker. She can always get a job at a grocery store." Morgan felt the words like a blade sliding between her ribs. "Just a baker." Kayla paused the recording with a gasp, like she couldn't survive hearing another second. Then, your requested hook. "If you've ever been called just something by people who underestimated you, keep listening. This is where it gets good." Kayla lowered the phone, shoulders shaking. "I can't marry into this. I can't raise a child in a family that eats its own." Morgan looked up sharply. "A child?" Kayla nodded, one hand lifting instinctively toward her stomach. "I found out last week. I wanted to give Alexander a chance to grow up. But after tonight, I don't want my baby anywhere near this." The bakery was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerators. Morgan felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not grief. Something colder. Something clarifying. The golden child wasn't golden. He was a parasite. And she realized with a strange sense of calm, had been the host this entire time. The engine that actually produced value. The one who worked. The one who built. The one they wanted to cannibalize when their fantasy fell apart. Morgan stood slowly, wiping her hands on her apron. She felt no tremor, no fear. Her heartbeat was a measured metronome, a cold smile curled at the corner of her mouth. "I am a baker," she said softly. "And tomorrow, I'm going to serve them exactly what they ordered." Kayla stared at her, breath trembling. "What are you going to do?" Morgan locked the bakery door, turned off the lights, and let the darkness sharpen her resolve. "Something they can't swallow." Robert and Alexander arrived at exactly 10 a.m., punctual in the way predators are punctual when they're sure the prey can't run anymore. Both wore business casual armor. Pressed shirts, polished shoes, and matching briefcases that screamed, "We've already won." Robert entered first, carrying the stiff smile of a man who believed he was about to fix a situation he caused. Alexander followed, eyes darting around the bakery. not with nostalgia or guilt, but with calculation. He paused at the espresso machine, his gaze lingering a moment too long, as if estimating how much he could get for it. "Morning," Robert said, brisk and confident. "We're here to finalize things. Let's keep this simple." He set the papers on a reclaimed oak table, Morgan's favorite one, the one she built with her own hands, and tapped the signature line. "Sign here," he said, sliding the pen toward her. "And here. This will make the transition smooth for everyone." Alexander chimed in, trying and failing to sound authoritative. "It's really the best move. For the family." Morgan nodded slowly, picking up the pen with steady fingers. She watched their shoulders lower, their confidence settle, their certainty crystallize. "Good," she clicked the pen. But instead of lowering it to the paper, she turned, walked behind the counter, and tapped the Bluetooth button on the bakery's sound system. Soft beep. A brief crackle. Then the recording filled the room. Alexander's voice. "She's not budging, Dad. What if she says no?" "Robert, she won't. She's grateful for crumbs." Both men froze. The color drained so fast from Alexander's face. He looked translucent. Robert's jaw shifted sideways, like his skull suddenly didn't fit right. The briefcases hung from their hands like dead limbs. The recording continued mercilessly. "Robert, we strip it for parts. Sell everything. She's just a baker. She can always get a job at a grocery store." Alexander made a strangled sound. Half gasp, half denial. Robert took a step forward. "Morgan, now wait, let's talk about." She held up a manila envelope. "No," she said simply. She dropped the contents on the table. 2 restraining orders, each with their names printed clearly at the top. Beneath them, copies of the police report. "False reporting to a government agency," she said, voice calm. "Misdemeanor." Another paper. "Conspiracy to defraud a small business owner," she continued. "Felony." Alexander's breathing quickened to a panicked staccato. Robert's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Morgan, we can explain." She shut the folder. "Save it for the judge. The police have the audio file." The silence that followed was thick, humiliating, final. Morgan walked to the front door, unlocked it, and swung it wide open. "Get out." They didn't argue. They didn't negotiate. They didn't even look back. They ran, briefcases thumping against their legs, tripping over each other in their scramble to escape the consequences they never imagined they'd face. And Morgan stood in the doorway, watching them flee the bakery they tried, and failed, to destroy. 1 month later, the bakery breathed a different kind of life. Morning light spilled through the front windows in soft gold streaks, catching dust motes that danced like tiny celebratory confetti. Every table was full. No gaps, no awkward empty spaces, no silent VIP shrine waiting for people who never deserved it. The reserved sign was gone. It wasn't needed anymore. Customers chatted over pastries, the line stretched past the door, and the ovens hummed with steady, joyful purpose. In the center of the swirl, Morgan wiped her hands on her apron, looking less like someone who had survived a war and more like someone who had finally come home. Her lead baker, Simon, burst into laughter near the prep counter. Something about the sourdough starter, staring back at him. Across the room, Jade, her barista, concentrated intensely as she poured a latte, the foam forming an intricate fern leaf. She grinned when she got it just right. These were her people. Mid-morning, a familiar woman in oversized sunglasses slipped out the door, a notorious food critic known for scathing reviews and impossible standards. On table 7, she'd left a folded napkin and a neatly placed $20 bill. Morgan opened the napkin. "Integrity tastes better than anything." Beside it, tucked carefully under the plate, was a check for $2,500. A tip, a blessing, and a recognition all in one. Morgan felt warmth rise in her chest. Not the brittle kind she used to chase from her family, but the grounded, steady kind that grows in places built on honesty and grit. She looked around at the packed space, the bustling staff, the hum of community she had created. She hadn't lost a family. She had gained her freedom, and built a better family in its place. Not from blood, but from flour, sugar, and mutual respect. If you've ever had to build your own table because your family wouldn't give you a seat, share this story. You are not alone.